Millionaire stories. What happens when a rich CEO unexpectedly falls in love with a humble cleaning lady? Hey everyone, welcome back to Stories TH. Today, we're diving into some truly fascinating millionaire stories, those moments when luck, grit, and a little bit of magic come together. Just a heads up though, watching these tales might inspire you, or at least make you want to raid your piggy bank. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. If you haven't already, Stories TH got plenty more stories coming your way. Oh, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far our community reaches. So get comfy, maybe grab a cozy drink, and let's settle in. This isn't just about money, it's about dreams, struggles, and those aha moments that change everything. Ready? Let's jump right in. The wealthy CEO and humble cleaner. In the heart of New York City, under the blinding glow of towering skyscrapers and endless streams of traffic, there lived a man whose life was the epitome of success. Alexander Grant was the kind of CEO people whispered about in boardrooms, the archetype of wealth and power. His empire stretched across continents, his decisions worth billions, and his image polished and untouchable. Yet, behind the glass walls of his penthouse office on the 56th floor of the Grant Tower, the weight of that success often felt more like a cage than a crown. Meanwhile, in the shadows of that same glittering city, far below the glass facades and marble lobbies, was a woman whose life was the quiet opposite. Maria, a humble cleaning lady, swept the floors and tidied the corridors of the very building where Alexander ruled his corporate kingdom. Every night, when the city's elite had gone home, she moved silently among the echoes of power, unnoticed but essential. Her world was small but honest, marked by long hours, simple joys, and a resilience born from years of struggle. It was almost poetic, this contrast between two lives living parallel in the same space, yet worlds apart. Alexander, draped in tailored suits, commanding the fate of thousands. Maria, armed with a mop and bucket, carrying the hopes of a different kind of survival. Little did either of them know, fate was about to weave their stories together in a way no one could have predicted. The contrast between their worlds posed a subtle question: what really defines a person's worth? Is it the size of their bank account, the prestige of their job, or the strength of their character hidden beneath the surface? And more intriguingly, can love truly bridge such a vast divide? Alexander had always believed in control. Control over his business, his image, even his emotions. But life has a way of humbling the most powerful, often in the smallest moments. That's what happened the night he first noticed Maria not as a blur in the corner of his office, but as a presence, a person with eyes that held stories he hadn't imagined. For years, Alexander's life was a series of high-stakes meetings, lavish dinners, and endless travel. The world of the ultra-wealthy was a dazzling stage where every move was calculated, every smile measured. Yet behind the scenes, loneliness crept in. He had money, influence, even admiration, but real connection was scarce. In a world where everyone wanted something from him, who could he really trust? Maria, on the other hand, was no stranger to hard work and invisibility. Her days began before dawn and ended long after the city had gone quiet. She was careful, efficient, but there was an unspoken sadness in her steady routine. She dreamed of something more of a life, where she wasn't just a shadow sweeping the floors, but someone seen and valued. The building where Alexander ruled was more than just steel and glass. It was a microcosm of society's hierarchy. At the top were CEOs, executives, and celebrities, basking in wealth and influence. At the bottom, workers like Maria, whose labor kept the building functioning, but whose faces never made headlines. It was a silent world of power and invisibility coexisting uneasily. And then, one chilly autumn evening, their worlds collided. Alexander was rushing to a late meeting, his mind racing with numbers and deadlines, when he slipped on a wet floor near the elevator lobby. The room spun briefly, and before he could steady himself, a firm but gentle hand caught his arm. "Are you okay, sir?" Maria asked, her voice steady despite the surprise in her eyes. It was an ordinary moment, but for Alexander, it was a crack in his perfectly constructed world. Here was a woman he had never really noticed before, simple, unassuming, yet somehow grounded in a way he wasn't. He looked at her properly for the first time and saw not just a cleaning lady, but someone with quiet dignity and warmth. This unexpected encounter marked the beginning of something neither of them could have foreseen. The idea that a CEO and a cleaning lady could connect on any level seemed, to the outside world, impossible or even foolish. But beneath the surface, a seed of curiosity took root. Of course, the question lingered, as it often does in stories of unlikely love. Can wealth truly buy happiness? Or does it build walls that keep the heart locked away? For Alexander, this question was no longer theoretical. His life of privilege suddenly felt fragile, vulnerable to the simple, sincere kindness he saw in Maria's eyes. And for Maria, the encounter stirred feelings she had buried: deep hope, excitement, and the risky idea that maybe, just maybe, love doesn't care about titles or bank balances. Between the dazzling city lights and the quiet corridors, a story began to unfold, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, success, and what really matters in life. Now, the real question arises. In a world where power and money rule, can two people from completely different worlds find common ground? Or is love in such a place nothing more than a beautiful illusion, a fleeting dream against the harsh reality of society's expectations? The stage is set, the players are ready, and the city watches silently as their story begins. City lights and high stakes, pressure. Beneath the shimmering skyline of New York City, where the night never truly sleeps, and the glow of neon competes with the stars, Alexander Grant's world operated at a relentless pace. His office, perched high above the bustling streets on the 56th floor of the Grant Tower, was a glass fortress overlooking a city of dreams and desperation. Here, the air was thick with ambition, tension, and the endless hum of deals being made or broken. Alexander sat behind his massive mahogany desk, the city lights casting faint reflections on the polished surface. His sharp eyes scanned the reports spread before him: financial forecasts, market analyses, shareholder expectations. Each document was a thread in the complex tapestry of his empire. The weight of responsibility was palpable. Every decision could tip the balance between monumental success and catastrophic failure. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Yellow cabs zipped through crowded avenues, late-night diners buzzed with chatter, and street vendors packed up their stalls. But inside this tower, time seemed suspended, measured only by the ticking of the expensive clock on the wall and the steady flow of caffeine in Alexander's veins. It was in this world of glass and steel, of power and prestige, that Alexander grappled with his greatest challenge: not just maintaining his empire, but preserving the image of control he had spent a lifetime building. The pressure was relentless. Investors were restless, competitors hungry, and the looming threat of a market crash was a constant shadow. Meanwhile, several floors below, another world unfolded quietly in the same building. Maria moved through the corridors with practiced grace, her movements precise, yet unobtrusive. Armed with a mop, a bucket, and an unwavering work ethic, she cleaned the floors and emptied the trash bins, restoring order after a day's chaos. To most, she was invisible, a mere part of the building's background hum, but to those who noticed, she was a testament to resilience and dignity. Maria's life was a stark contrast to Alexander's. She lived in a modest apartment several subway stops away, where the noise of the city was louder, the air thicker, and the nights colder. Her days were long, her work physically demanding, but she carried herself with a quiet pride. Despite the hardships, she nurtured small dreams of a better future, of education, maybe even of love. The city's towering lights illuminated two vastly different existences under the same sky. Alexander, in his tailored suits and high-tech gadgets, navigating boardroom battles; Maria, in her simple uniform, cleaning up after the high-powered world above. Yet, in this shared space, their lives were destined to intersect. The building itself was a character in their story, a symbol of disparity and connection. The same elevator that carried Alexander to his penthouse office was the one Maria used to transport her cleaning supplies. The same hallways that echoed with urgent footsteps also absorbed the silence of her solitary tasks. The night Alexander slipped on the wet floor near the elevator lobby was more than just a small accident. It was a moment where the rigid boundaries of their worlds blurred. Maria's quick reflexes and genuine concern pierced the armor of his carefully maintained persona. For once, Alexander was not the untouchable CEO, but a man vulnerable to the unexpected. That night, as Maria helped him steady himself, the office lights dimmed and the city outside seemed to pause. Alexander looked at her with a mix of surprise and curiosity. Here was someone who belonged to a world so far removed from his own, yet whose presence made him feel unexpectedly grounded. This moment sparked a change. Alexander began to notice details he had overlooked. The tired lines on Maria's face, the strength in her hands, the way she moved with purpose, despite the invisibility imposed by society. He found himself wondering about her life beyond the walls of the skyscraper, the challenges she faced, the dreams she held close. Their brief encounter raised an unspoken question. In a life dominated by numbers and status, what place was there for genuine human connection? For Alexander, who was used to controlling every aspect of his world, this was a disarming thought. Could he allow himself to step outside the fortress of wealth and power, even if just for a moment? Meanwhile, Maria felt a flutter of emotions she hadn't expected. She had always kept her heart guarded, wary of the vast gap between her world and the glittering elite above. Yet, in Alexander's eyes, she glimpsed a vulnerability that mirrored her own. It was a subtle recognition, a silent bridge between two souls shaped by very different circumstances. As the city lights flickered and the night deepened, both Alexander and Maria found themselves at a crossroads. Their worlds were still apart, separated by invisible walls of class and expectation. But the connection sparked in that quiet moment hinted at something more, a possibility that love might not be limited by wealth or status. Of course, the reality was far more complicated. Alexander's life was bound by obligations to shareholders, board members, and a public image that demanded perfection. Any hint of scandal or distraction could unravel years of hard-won respect. Maria faced societal judgments and the harsh reality of being a woman trying to rise from the margins in a world that often overlooked her. This collision of worlds brought forth a larger debate. In the high-stakes universe of the wealthy, is love a genuine choice or a risky gamble? When power and money dictate so much, can authentic feelings survive, or are they doomed to be overshadowed by suspicion and societal pressure? Alexander pondered these questions late into the night, his gaze drifting from the glowing cityscape to the modest apartment address Maria had unintentionally revealed during their brief exchange. He wondered what her life was like when the office lights went out and the skyscraper became just another building in the vast city. And Maria, in the quiet of her small home, replayed the moment over and over. She knew the gulf between them was vast, but a small seed of hope had been planted, a hope that perhaps, beneath the glitter and the grind, two people could find something real. As dawn approached, the city prepared to wake again, relentless and unforgiving. Alexander returned to his world of strategy and ambition, while Maria prepared for another day of unseen labor. But neither could forget the brief intersection of their lives, a moment that might just change everything. In the heart of the city that never sleeps, a story of unexpected connection and tentative hope was quietly unfolding. And with it, the question remained, could love truly bridge the divide between a wealthy CEO and a humble cleaning lady? A fateful encounter. In a city where everyone seemed to be rushing somewhere, be it to a meeting, a date, or an opportunity sometimes, the most unexpected moments happened when time slowed down. For Alexander and Maria, that moment came sooner than either could have anticipated. It was a chilly evening, the kind that made the glow of streetlights seem warmer, almost inviting. Alexander was running late for a critical board meeting that could make or break his company's future. His mind was a whirlwind of figures, strategies, and what-ifs, each thought competing for space as he navigated the crowded lobby of Grant Tower. Maria, carrying her cleaning supplies, was finishing her shift. She moved efficiently, aware of the building's usual rhythm, the high heels clicking on marble floors, the murmur of business deals, and the occasional careless rush of executives late for appointments. To her, this was just another night, another series of tasks, another set of quiet moments hidden in the shadows of opulence. Their paths crossed near the elevators, a place where countless lives intersected daily, but rarely connected beyond a nod or a glance. This time, something was different. Alexander, distracted by a call on his phone, didn't notice the small puddle of water near the elevator doors. His polished shoe slipped, and for a brief second, the powerful CEO was completely unbalanced. Before he could fall, a steady hand caught his arm. "Are you all right, sir?" Maria asked, her voice calm but filled with concern. Alexander looked up, startled to see her there, not just as the cleaning lady he barely registered before, but as someone who had saved him from a literal fall. There was an unspoken recognition, a shared moment of vulnerability that cut through the usual facades they both wore. "I'm fine, thanks to you," Alexander said, a hint of genuine gratitude in his voice. For Maria, it was the first time in a long while that someone in his world had spoken to her like a person, not just an invisible worker. Her heart fluttered, but she kept her composure. "Just be careful," she replied with a small smile. This brief interaction set off a chain reaction neither could have predicted. Alexander found himself thinking about Maria long after the meeting had ended, replaying the moment in his mind, as if searching for clues to something he couldn't yet understand. Her kindness, her strength, the quiet dignity in her eyes, they all lingered like a soft melody beneath the noise of his busy life. Maria, too, felt the stirrings of something new. It was strange and exhilarating to realize that the man who seemed so untouchable could also be so human. She wondered what he saw in her beyond the uniform and the mop. Was it just a moment of politeness, or was there something deeper? In the days that followed, their encounters became more frequent, though still accidental. Alexander noticed Maria's presence in the building's corridors, a comforting constant amid his chaotic schedule. Maria observed Alexander's hurried steps, the furrowed brow, and the moments when his confident mask slipped. They began exchanging small words, hello in passing, a nod of acknowledgement, a shared joke about the unpredictable New York weather. These tiny bridges slowly chipped away at the barriers built by wealth and status. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Alexander found himself lingering near the lobby, unexpectedly seeking Maria's company. He wanted to know more about the woman who had, without realizing it, unsettled his carefully ordered world. "Do you ever get tired of this place?" he asked quietly, nodding toward the lobby. Maria paused, surprised by the question, but pleased. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but it's more than a job. It's my way to keep going." Alexander listened, sensing there was much more beneath her simple words, a story of resilience, sacrifice, and hope. He realized that in his world of endless ambition, he had forgotten what it meant to just keep going. Their conversations grew deeper, filled with stories of past struggles and future dreams. Alexander shared fragments of his life, the relentless pressure to succeed, the loneliness of wealth. Maria spoke of her family, the sacrifices she made, and the small joys that kept her spirit alive. Through these exchanges, a connection blossomed, quiet, tentative, but powerful. It was a reminder that beneath the surface of power and poverty, ambition and humility, were shared human desires, to be seen, to be understood, to be loved. Yet, as their bond grew, so did the challenges. The world they inhabited was unforgiving, and a love between a CEO and a cleaning lady was bound to attract scrutiny, skepticism, and even scorn. Still, in those moments together, Alexander and Maria found a rare refuge. Against the backdrop of a city that never stopped moving, they discovered that sometimes fate's most profound encounters happen when two worlds collide unexpectedly, breaking down walls and opening hearts. And so their story continued not as a fairy tale, but as a real, unfolding journey that asked a timeless question. Can love truly bridge the chasm between wealth and simplicity? Or is it destined to be yet another dream, lost in the city lights? Secrets behind the glamour. In the glittering world of high finance and corporate power, appearances are everything. For Alexander Grant, the polished CEO of Grant Enterprises, maintaining an image of control and perfection was as crucial as the billions under his management. But behind the tailored suits and gleaming skyscraper offices, secrets simmered, secrets that could shatter not only his empire, but his carefully constructed identity. It was during one late evening, after another grueling board meeting, that Alexander found himself reflecting on Maria in a way that unsettled him. She was no longer just the humble cleaning lady who'd saved him from a slip. She had become a person of intrigue, a quiet presence he sought out in fleeting moments of respite. But what did he really know about her? And more importantly, what truths lay hidden beneath the surface of his own world? One afternoon, by a stroke of coincidence, or perhaps fate, Alexander stumbled upon a glimpse of Maria's life outside the tower. Passing through a modest neighborhood, several subway stops away, he caught sight of her entering a small community center. Curiosity pulled him closer, and without thinking, he followed at a discreet distance. Inside, the stark contrast between the glittering financial district and this humble locale was stark. Maria was no longer a faceless figure. Here, she was a dedicated volunteer, helping children with their homework, organizing food drives, and spreading warmth in a world often cold and indifferent. Alexander watched, captivated by the compassion and strength she exhibited. The woman he'd only seen in brief moments at work was a pillar in her community, a hidden hero navigating her own battles with grace. This discovery unsettled Alexander further. Here was a side of Maria that defied the assumptions often made about people like her. It made him question the judgments he'd unconsciously harbored about wealth, status, and what defined success. But the secret he uncovered about Maria paled in comparison to the revelation that awaited him soon after. Back at the Grant Tower, whispers began circulating about financial instability within the company. Despite years of prosperity, Grant Enterprises faced a looming crisis, a combination of risky investments, market fluctuations, and internal conflicts that threatened to unravel everything Alexander had built. To make matters worse, Alexander's long-term girlfriend, Catherine, a woman accustomed to the spotlight and the perks of wealth, was hiding her own secret. Alexander discovered through a chance encounter that Catherine had been concealing critical information about the company's failing assets, details that, if exposed, could devastate his reputation and career. The betrayal cut deep. Catherine was not just a lover, but a partner in the image he projected to the world. Her deception was a stark reminder that in his realm, trust was a luxury rarely afforded. Amid this turmoil, Maria's presence became a paradoxical source of solace and complexity. Alexander found himself drawn to her authenticity, her lack of pretense, qualities absent from his high-stakes world. Yet he also feared the consequences of letting her into his life, fully the inevitable clash between their vastly different realities. The growing bond between Alexander and Maria raised questions that extended beyond their personal story. In the elite circles where money and power dictated relationships, was love a genuine connection or just another calculated risk? Could Alexander reconcile his public persona with his private desires? And for Maria, could she step into a world so alien without losing herself? These questions sparked a broader debate, one often whispered in the halls of privilege and poverty alike. Is the facade of glamour a barrier to true happiness? Does the pursuit of wealth blind people to the simple truths of love and trust? Alexander wrestled with these dilemmas in the quiet moments between board meetings and public appearances. He found himself reflecting on the meaning of success. Was it measured by financial statements and social status, or by the depth of human connection? Maria, too, was confronting her own truths. She understood that the man she was growing to care for lived in a world of illusions and pressures she could barely imagine. But she also sensed that beneath the veneer of power, Alexander was searching for something real, a break from the endless cycle of ambition and loneliness. Their growing relationship became a delicate dance of revelation and concealment, of hope and fear. Every stolen conversation and secret glance carried the weight of unspoken challenges, yet also the promise of something extraordinary. As the financial crisis loomed and personal betrayals surfaced, Alexander and Maria stood at the crossroads of their lives. Would they let secrets and social divides tear them apart, or would love prove stronger than the shimmering illusions of wealth and power? In the end, their story was not just about two people from different worlds finding each other. It was a mirror reflecting the universal struggle to find authenticity in a world obsessed with appearances. And as the city's lights flickered in the distance, Both Alexander and Maria realized that sometimes the most profound truths are hidden not in the glittering facade, but in the courage to be vulnerable. Fleeting but meaningful moments. In a world where time was the most precious currency, Alexander and Maria's encounters were often brief, fleeting glances exchanged in hallways, hurried conversations by the elevator, a shared smile before the rush of their separate lives pulled them apart again. Yet within these small, seemingly insignificant moments, a deep connection began to form, fragile but undeniable. For Alexander, these moments were like windows opening into a world he had long forgotten, the world of simple joys and genuine human interaction. Each time Maria crossed his path, a warmth spread through him, softening the edges of his sharp, calculated existence. Her presence was a quiet rebellion against the coldness of corporate life, a reminder that beneath the layers of power and expectation, he was still a man craving authenticity. Maria, too, cherished these stolen interactions. They were brief escapes from her demanding routine, glimpses of a life that seemed just out of reach, but suddenly attainable. In Alexander's eyes, she saw not the towering CEO, but a man capable of tenderness and understanding, a rare gift in the world she inhabited. One evening, after the building had emptied and the city outside hummed with nocturnal energy, Alexander found himself waiting near the lobby, hoping to catch a glimpse of Maria before she left. The dim lighting cast long shadows, and the silence between them spoke volumes. "I didn't expect to see you here," Maria said softly, her voice a blend of surprise and something deeper. Alexander smiled, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his usual composure. "I guess I'm learning to appreciate the quieter parts of this building," he replied. They talked about everything and nothing, the unpredictable weather, the best coffee spots in the city, childhood memories. These conversations, though simple, were a lifeline for both, tethering them to a shared reality beyond their social divides. Through these moments, Alexander discovered Maria's sharp wit and resilience. She spoke candidly about her struggles and dreams, unafraid to expose the scars life had left on her. Maria learned of Alexander's hidden loneliness, the burdens of leadership, and the fear of losing himself in a world obsessed with appearances. Their connection deepened not through grand gestures, but through the accumulation of small, meaningful exchanges. It was in the way Alexander remembered the brand of soap Maria preferred, or how she liked her tea. It was in the way Maria noticed the lines of stress on Alexander's face and offered a quiet word of encouragement. Yet, these moments were not without tension. Both were painfully aware of the barriers that stood between them: class differences, societal expectations, and the risk of heartbreak. Each encounter carried the unspoken question: could their worlds ever truly merge? Alexander grappled with the implications of his growing feelings. In a realm where love was often transactional, his attraction to Maria felt both exhilarating and dangerous. He feared the judgment of his peers and the potential fallout if their relationship became public knowledge. But more than that, he feared losing himself to the vulnerability that love demanded. Maria, too, was cautious. She understood the realities of their disparate lives and worried about the consequences. Was she ready to step into a world that might never fully accept her? Could she withstand the scrutiny and the sacrifices love might require? Despite these fears, they found solace in each other's company. Their moments together were sanctuaries from a world that often demanded too much. In the quiet spaces between chaos, they shared laughter, stories, and the kind of understanding that transcended words. These fleeting encounters also revealed the beauty of impermanence, the idea that sometimes the most profound connections are not bound by time or circumstance, but by the intensity of feeling in the present. In a way, Alexander and Maria's relationship mirrored the city around them, a complex mosaic of light and shadow, fleeting encounters, and enduring hopes. Their story was a testament to the power of small moments to change lives, to break down walls, and to build bridges across seemingly insurmountable divides. Yet, as their bond grew, so did the challenges. The pressures of Alexander's world loomed larger, and Maria's reality remained stark. The brief, meaningful moments they shared were both a refuge and a reminder of the obstacles they faced. And so, their journey continued, marked by stolen conversations, lingering looks, and the quiet hope that love could be enough to overcome the distance between two hearts. In the end, their story asked a timeless question. In a life filled with noise and distraction, can two people find true connection in the fleeting moments they share? And if so, what lengths will they go to keep those moments alive? Love through the eyes of the rich. If there was one thing I'd learned, sitting in the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows looking down on Manhattan, it was that love in my world wasn't simple. Alexander Grant here, CEO, strategist, millionaire by every conceivable metric. And yet, when it came to love, I often felt like a rookie in a game where everyone else seemed to have the rulebook except me. It's funny, really. People think that money solves everything, including matters of the heart. But in the high towers where I live and work, love often feels like a luxury, a distraction, or worse, a transaction wrapped in expensive gifts and curated social appearances. Genuine emotions, rare, vulnerability, almost non-existent. When Maria walked into my life, not as a partner at a gala or a business negotiation, but as a humble cleaning lady, it disrupted everything I thought I knew about love and what it meant to be human. Her world was one of grit and grace, far removed from my champagne-soaked boardrooms and five-star hotel suites. And yet, something about her authenticity hit me like a revelation. I'll admit, at first, I was cautious, not just because of the social divide. The whispering corridors of power are full of judgment, but because allowing myself to care so deeply felt like exposing a weakness. In my world, power is armor, but Maria's presence softened that armor, showed me that beneath the tailored suits and aggressive meetings, I was still a man who longed to be seen, to be loved for who I really was. Every glance from her was a reminder of what I'd been missing: the ease of genuine laughter, the honesty in her eyes, the way she didn't need to impress or perform. It made me question my own relationships, the carefully managed romances that felt more like PR campaigns than connections. I started to see love as something beyond the numbers on a balance sheet or the applause of the elite. It was messy, unpredictable, and utterly human. And that scared me. Society loves to romanticize stories of love crossing class divides, the rich and poor falling for each other against all odds. But rarely do we talk about the complexities beneath the surface, the late-night doubts, the silent fears, the battles with ego and expectation. For me, loving Maria meant confronting my own insecurities. It meant risking scandal and rejection. But it also meant experiencing something profoundly real. There was a night I remember vividly. After a long day of meetings and shareholder calls, I found myself sitting alone in the office, the city lights sparkling below. The loneliness of power weighed heavily, but then Maria's message popped up on my phone. A simple, "Good night, Alexander." It was a small thing, but it pierced the isolation. Suddenly, the towering office felt less like a cage and more like a vantage point where hope still existed. I knew that if I wanted to keep this connection alive, I had to be honest with myself and the world. To face the question that's often whispered in my circles: can love between a millionaire CEO and a cleaning lady survive the relentless glare of society? The truth is, love in my world is a tightrope walk, balancing image, ambition, and genuine feeling. But with Maria, I felt willing to walk that line, even if it meant stumbling. She made me realize that wealth and status are just part of a story, not the whole narrative. That beneath the glamour and power, what matters most is the connection between two souls. And as I sit here now, reflecting on this journey, I understand that love through the eyes of the rich isn't about opulence or grand gestures. It's about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses to stay despite the odds. So, yes, love in my world is complicated, but with Maria, it's also the most real thing I've ever known. Opposition from society and family. Love, as I soon learned, was never just about two people. When a CEO and a cleaning lady dared to cross the invisible lines drawn by society, their relationship became a battleground. Alexander and Maria faced not only the pressures of their own doubts, but the relentless opposition of a world that wasn't ready to accept their love. At first, the whispers were subtle, curious glances from colleagues, raised eyebrows at exclusive events, the polite but pointed questions from acquaintances. In the cutthroat realm of business and high society, appearances mattered more than ever. A relationship like theirs threatened the carefully curated image Alexander had maintained for years. His family, entrenched in traditions of wealth and status, reacted with thinly veiled disapproval. Alexander's parents, powerful figures in their own right, struggled to understand how their son could be drawn to someone from such a different background. To them, Maria was an outsider, a disruption to the legacy they had painstakingly built. "I just want what's best for you," his mother said during one tense dinner, "someone who understands our world, our expectations." But Alexander's heart was no longer tethered to old notions of convenience and social climbing. He saw Maria not as a challenge to be overcome, but as a partner whose authenticity enriched his life. Yet, balancing love and family loyalty was a delicate and often painful dance. Maria, too, felt the sting of judgment. Friends warned her to be cautious, reminding her of the vast gulf between their worlds. "Do you really think a man like that can love you, or is he just being kind?" one whispered with thinly disguised skepticism. Her own family, while supportive, feared the heartbreak that might come from reaching too far. They understood the reality of social divides in ways Alexander's family could not. For them, the fear was that love alone might not be enough to overcome the barriers erected by class and circumstance. These external pressures seeped into Alexander and Maria's relationship, testing their resolve. Arguments flared, not about love, but about the weight of expectation and the fear of losing what little they had. At times, Alexander wondered if his pursuit of genuine connection was foolish in a world that valued power and status above all. He questioned whether love could truly survive the harsh scrutiny of those who measured worth by wealth. Maria wrestled with feelings of inadequacy and the constant reminder that their worlds were not meant to intersect. She feared becoming a pawn in a story not written for her, a footnote in a life dominated by privilege. Yet, amid the opposition, moments of strength and solidarity emerged. Alexander's few trusted friends saw beyond the societal facade and supported their bond. Maria found allies in unexpected places, colleagues who admired her courage and resilience. Together, they navigated the turbulent waters of social expectation, learning to stand firm against the tide of judgment. Their story became a reflection of a larger question. In a society obsessed with appearances, can love between vastly different worlds not only survive, but thrive? Or is it doomed to be crushed under the weight of tradition and prejudice? Alexander and Maria's journey illuminated the painful reality that love often comes with a price one paid not in dollars, but in courage, sacrifice, and unwavering belief. Through the opposition, they discovered that love is not just about passion, but also about endurance. It's about choosing each other every day, despite the doubts, the disapproval, and the challenges. And in that choice lay the true measure of their love, a love that dared to defy societal norms and rewrite the rules on its own terms. The difficult choice. At some point in every story about love and ambition, there comes a moment when the protagonist stands at a crossroads, forced to choose between two paths that pull in opposite directions. For Alexander Grant, that moment arrived not with fanfare, but with a crushing sense of inevitability. The delicate balance between his towering career and the fragile love he'd found with Maria began to teeter, threatening to collapse under the weight of impossible decisions. The company was spiraling. The financial crisis Alexander had dreaded was no longer just a looming threat. It had arrived in full force. Reports of mismanaged investments, plunging stock prices, and restless shareholders filled his days and haunted his nights. Every move felt like walking on a tightrope over a chasm of ruin. Failure was no longer an abstract fear. It was imminent. In the midst of this storm, his relationship with Maria blossomed, but also became painfully complicated. The love that had once offered a refuge now demanded sacrifices neither was fully prepared to make. Alexander was torn. On one hand, there was the empire he had built, years of sweat, strategy, and unyielding determination. On the other, there was Maria, whose presence reminded him of the simple joys and genuine connection he had long been missing. But could he afford to choose both? Pressure mounted from every direction. His board demanded undivided attention. Family voices grew louder, urging him to focus on preserving their legacy. Friends offered cautious advice, warning him about the dangers of mixing business with personal entanglements. Sometimes, Alexander, his closest confidant, said one evening over whiskey and cigars, you have to make sacrifices for the greater good. Love is great, but a crumbling empire is harder to rebuild. But what was the greater good when the cost was losing Maria? The thought was unbearable. Maria felt the strain too. She watched Alexander retreat into himself, the weight of the world pressing down on his broad shoulders. She knew she was part of his dilemma, a constant reminder of the life he might have to leave behind, to be with her. Their conversations became charged with unspoken fears. Neither wanted to admit the possibility of losing what they had, but the reality was there, lurking beneath every tender moment. I don't want you to give up on your dreams, Maria told him one night, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. But I also can't be the reason you lose yourself. Alexander reached a crossroads that no CEO's boardroom training could prepare him for. Was success measured solely by financial triumph, or was it also about the courage to pursue love against all odds? Could he redefine what it meant to be a leader, someone who valued connection as much as power? The debate was not just personal, but philosophical. In a world driven by ambition, where does love fit? Is it a luxury or a necessity? A choice or a sacrifice? Late nights blurred into early mornings as Alexander wrestled with his conscience. The company needed a savior, but his heart needed Maria. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he confessed his fears to her. I'm scared, he said simply, scared of losing everything and scared of losing you. Maria reached out, taking his hand in hers. Then we face it together, she said, no matter what happens. Their resolve was tested again and again as the crisis deepened. Alexander found unexpected strength in Maria's support, and Maria discovered resilience in Alexander's determination to protect their love. But the difficult choice remained. The path forward was unclear, fraught with risk and uncertainty. Would Alexander sacrifice his empire for love, or would love be the casualty of his ambition? Their story, like so many before, was a reminder that sometimes the hardest decisions are not about winning or losing, but about finding balance between heart and duty, between dreams and reality. And in that struggle lay the true essence of their journey, the courage to choose, the willingness to fight, and the hope that love might just be the greatest victory of all. The cleaner's silent dreams. I've always believed that dreams don't care about where you come from. They're quiet, stubborn things that live inside you, sometimes hiding, sometimes shouting, but always pushing you forward. My name is Maria, and for years, my dream was simple: to carve out a life where I wasn't invisible, where my story mattered beyond the floors I cleaned and the shadows I moved through. Every morning, before dawn broke over New York City, I woke up in my small apartment, the sounds of the subway rumbling beneath. The world outside was loud and unforgiving, but inside me was a quiet hope, the kind that clings to you when life isn't easy, when the bills pile up and the future feels uncertain. Working as a cleaning lady in the Grant Tower wasn't glamorous. It was grueling, thankless work, done mostly out of sight. But it paid the rent and put food on the table. And despite what people might think, it wasn't just a job to me. It was my way of holding on to dignity in a world that often tries to strip it away. I had dreams, though, dreams that went beyond mops and trash bins. I wanted to take night classes, maybe study business or something creative. I wanted to be someone who could walk into a room and not just be the cleaner. I wanted respect not just for what I did, but for who I was. Meeting Alexander changed everything, but it also complicated my dreams. Here was a man from a world I barely understood, offering a glimpse of something more. But with that glimpse came fears of rejection, of losing myself, of being judged. I often wondered if love could survive the vast gulf between us. Could someone like me ever fit into his world? Would my past and my dreams be enough, or would they always be overshadowed by where I came from? There were nights I lay awake, thinking about what it meant to dream, when the odds were stacked against you, when every day was a struggle, just to keep moving forward. But I also believed that dreams are worth fighting for, even if no one else sees their value. When Alexander and I talked about our future, it wasn't just about us. It was about breaking cycles, redefining what success meant. I wanted him to see me not as a charity case, but as a partner, equal and strong. And I hope to see myself that way too. Sometimes, I caught myself imagining a life where our worlds weren't so separate, where I could walk beside him, not as a cleaner, but as someone who belonged. It was scary and thrilling. But the truth was, love had already pushed me to confront fears I didn't know I had. It made me question everything I thought about myself and my place in the world. And yet, through all the uncertainty, I held on to one thing, the belief that my dreams mattered, that love didn't erase who I was, but could help me become even more. Alexander taught me that love could be a force for change, not just a feeling. It gave me courage to pursue those silent dreams, to step into a future where I wasn't limited by my past or my job. So here I am, standing at the edge of possibility, ready to leap even if the fall is uncertain. Because some dreams are worth the risk, and love, true love, is one of them. Sweet moments in a harsh world. In the midst of the relentless pace and pressure of our separate worlds, Alexander and I found something rare, a brief sanctuary where time slowed, and the chaos outside faded into the background. These sweet moments were small, often unexpected, but they became the stitches holding together the fragile fabric of our connection. It was a cold winter evening when we first truly escaped together. The city was wrapped in a soft blanket of snow, the usual neon glare softened by the gentle fall. Alexander had just wrapped up a grueling day of meetings, his shoulders heavy with the weight of impending decisions. I was finishing my shift, tired but determined to savor what little time we had. We met at a quiet cafe tucked away from the usual hustle, a place neither of us had been before. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the chill outside, and as we settled into a corner booth, the outside world seemed to pause. For a few hours, there were no boardrooms, no cleaning schedules, no expectations. Just two people sharing stories, laughter, and the simple joy of each other's company. Alexander surprised me with his humor, a dry wit that caught me off guard and made me laugh more than I had in weeks. He talked about childhood memories, his love for classic jazz, and even confessed his guilty pleasure for cheesy romantic movies. I shared my dreams, my fears, and the little things that kept me going, like my mother's recipe for chicken soup and the smell of rain on the pavement. In those moments, the barriers between us seemed to dissolve. The CEO and the cleaner were just Alexander and Maria, two imperfect souls finding refuge in each other's presence. We walked through the snowy streets afterward, the city transformed into a quiet wonderland. Alexander held my hand, a simple gesture that felt profound against the backdrop of our complicated lives. Yet, even in these sweet escapes, reality lingered. We both knew that once the night ended, the challenges would return, the judgment, the fear, the overwhelming pressure of our worlds. But those stolen moments were worth every risk. They reminded us why we fought for each other, why love could be a beacon even in the darkest times. Sometimes, it's in the smallest joys, a shared smile, a warm touch, a whispered word, that love reveals its true power. For Alexander and me, these moments were lifelines, proof that despite everything, connection and hope could survive. As the snow melted and the city awoke to another demanding day, we carried those memories with us, fuel for the battles ahead. And though the world around us was harsh and unyielding, we learned that love's sweetness could bloom even in the most unlikely places. Major crisis news of imminent bankruptcy. In the ruthless arena of high finance, where billions rise and fall in the blink of an eye, the word bankruptcy is a scarlet letter feared, whispered about, yet often inevitable. For Alexander Grant, that word had moved from distant rumor to a stark, unavoidable reality. The empire he had meticulously built, the vast corporate kingdom towering over New York's skyline, was teetering on the edge of collapse. And with its fall, so too threatened to crumble the very identity he had forged over decades of ambition, sacrifice, and relentless drive. It began with subtle signs, the kind of quiet signals only insiders catch. Sharp dips in quarterly earnings, cautious notes from financial analysts, and unusually tense boardroom meetings. At first, Alexander had convinced himself it was just a rough patch, something temporary in the volatile world of business. But as the weeks dragged on, the numbers told a harsher story. Investments were souring, debts ballooning, and the cash flow slowing to a dangerous trickle. Each report was a nail in the coffin of the corporation he'd once seen as invincible. The whispers transformed into urgent conversations behind closed doors. Senior executives exchanged worried glances. Loyal shareholders grew restless and demanded answers. The media, always hungry for a story, sensed vulnerability and began circling like vultures. Alexander, the composed and confident CEO, felt the cracks beginning to show beneath his polished exterior. The weight of saving the company pressed down on him with suffocating force, invading every corner of his life. Amidst this corporate turmoil, Alexander's personal world, the one piece of normalcy and warmth he clung to, was shaken as well. Maria, the woman who had become his unexpected anchor, stood beside him quietly, offering strength and solace, even as the storm threatened to consume everything. But the crisis would soon test not only Alexander's leadership, but the very foundation of their relationship. The news came on a biting autumn morning when the air was crisp and the city's usual hustle was tinged with an uneasy energy. A formal notice from the company's financial advisors made it clear Grant Enterprises was on the brink of bankruptcy. Without immediate, drastic intervention, the company's collapse was inevitable. The board called an emergency meeting to decide the future, and Alexander was the man expected to lead the charge in this battle for survival. Sitting alone in his vast office, the sprawling cityscape glowing dimly beneath him, Alexander grappled with the enormity of his predicament. The plush leather chair beneath him suddenly felt cold and alien. His phone buzzed relentlessly, calls from panicked shareholders, worried family members, and reporters sniffing for any sign of scandal. The empire he had spent years building was crumbling, and the responsibility to save it rested squarely on his shoulders. Each decision ahead was a razor's edge. Cutting costs meant layoffs, betraying employees who had stood by the company for years. Selling off assets might provide quick cash, but at the risk of weakening the business's core. Every option was a choice between damage control and devastation. The stakes weren't just financial, they were deeply personal. Alexander's mind raced with memories of how far he'd come, from a determined young man hungry for success to a titan of industry whose decisions influenced thousands. But now, success felt elusive, slipping through his fingers like sand. The identity he had wrapped so tightly around himself, powerful, unbreakable, in control, was fracturing under pressure. His relationship with Maria, once a refuge from this high-stakes world, now felt vulnerable to the same forces threatening his company. He feared that the stress and scrutiny would spill over, testing their bond in ways neither was prepared for. Would love survive when everything else seemed to be falling apart? For Maria, witnessing Alexander's struggle was heart-wrenching. She saw the toll the crisis took his restless nights, his furrowed brow, the rare moments when the weight overwhelmed even his strong will. Yet she never wavered, offering steady support and reminding him of the human strength beneath the suit and titles. Their love, once a quiet haven, became a battleground where hope clashed with fear. Could they weather this tempest together, or would the pressures of impending failure and social judgment force them apart? As the emergency board meeting loomed, Alexander prepared to face the hardest moments of his career. The decisions he made would define not only the fate of Grant Enterprises, but the trajectory of his personal life. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, risk, and sacrifice. In the heart of a city that never sleeps, the story of a powerful empire on the brink of ruin, intertwined with the tale of two people holding on to fragile hope. For Alexander and Maria, the question was no longer just about wealth or status. It was about survival, love, and whether what they had built together could withstand the ultimate test. As Alexander stared out over the cityscape, the glittering lights below seemed both a reminder of all he stood to lose and a beacon calling him to fight harder than ever before. The battle lines were drawn, and the stakes had never been higher. This was the moment when true character was revealed not just as a CEO, but as a man, a lover, and a fighter. Sacrifice and the test of love. When the walls of Alexander Grant's carefully constructed world began to crumble, it wasn't just the empire that trembled. It was the fragile bond between him and Maria, a bond forged in stolen moments, but tested by the harsh realities of life. In those days of crisis, love became more than a feeling. It became a crucible that demanded sacrifice, resilience, and unwavering commitment. The news of the company's imminent bankruptcy had spread like wildfire through the corridors of power and whispered in the streets below. For Alexander, every decision was a razor's edge, and every choice carried consequences that rippled far beyond the boardroom. Yet amid this turmoil, Maria stood steadfast by his side, her presence a beacon of hope and strength in a world suddenly unrecognizable. The stakes were higher than ever. Alexander's daily routine blurred into a ceaseless barrage of meetings, strategy sessions, and damage control. Sleepless nights became the norm, his mind a battlefield of worries how to save the company, protect employees, and preserve what little stability remained in his personal life. The pressure was relentless, and the cost was visible in the lines etched deeper on his face and the shadows under his eyes. Maria, too, felt the strain. The woman who once found solace in their sweet, fleeting moments now grappled with uncertainty and fear. Her job was demanding, and the social divide between them felt like an ever-widening chasm. But more than anything, she feared losing Alexander, not just as a lover, but as the man who had opened her heart to possibilities she had long buried. Yet, love in times of crisis reveals its true nature. It's not just about passion or romance, it's about sacrifice. It's about standing firm when the world seems to crumble, about choosing each other despite the odds, and about carrying the weight together. Maria made sacrifices she never imagined. She adjusted her schedule to be there when Alexander needed her most early mornings before his first meeting, late nights when the city had gone quiet but his worries had not. She offered a listening ear, gentle encouragement, and the kind of comfort only someone who truly cares can provide. Alexander, in turn, found himself reevaluating what success meant. It was no longer just about the company's bottom line or his public image. It was about preserving the connection that had become his lifeline. He realized that the fortress of wealth and power he had built was meaningless without someone to share it with. Their relationship became a delicate dance of balancing ambition and affection. There were moments of tension, arguments sparked by stress, fears voiced in whispered conversations, and the ever-present question of whether love could endure the relentless pressures bearing down on them. Friends and family weighed in, some offering support, others cautioning against the risks. But Alexander and Maria knew that their bond was more than societal expectation or convenience. It was a choice, a conscious decision to fight for something real amid chaos. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Alexander found himself in Maria's modest apartment. The world outside was cold and indifferent, but inside there was warmth. They sat together in silence, the weight of the day heavy but softened by their shared presence. "I don't know what the future holds," Alexander admitted, voice rough with exhaustion, "but I do know I don't want to face it without you." Maria reached for his hand, her touch steady and sure. "We'll face it together," she said, "no matter what." That night, the promise between them was not just about enduring hardship, but about building something stronger, something that could survive the storms to come. Their love became a source of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest times, human connection can shine brightest. It was proof that sacrifice, when born from genuine affection, can forge unbreakable bonds. As the company's fate hung in the balance, Alexander and Maria learned that love is tested not by ease, but by endurance. It demands courage, patience, and sometimes the willingness to let go of control and simply trust. Their story was no longer just about a CEO and a cleaning lady. It was about two people choosing to stand side by side, embracing vulnerability and strength in equal measure. And in that choice lay the true power of their love, a force capable of weathering crises, defying expectations, and inspiring hope. Can love overcome all barriers? In the glittering world of CEOs and millionaires, where power and money dictate every move, love often seems like an outsider, a fragile idea surrounded by walls of skepticism and social expectation. For Alexander and Maria, their relationship was not just a personal journey, but a profound challenge to the norms that govern wealth, status, and human connection. It raised a question as old as time. Can love truly overcome all barriers? The answer, however, was anything but simple. From the moment their worlds collided, Alexander and Maria's love was under siege. The vast difference in social status was more than just a background detail. It was a wall that society, family, and even their own doubts erected between them. The CEO and the cleaning lady became symbols in a larger debate about class, power, and the possibility of genuine connection in a divided world. Critics questioned the viability of their relationship. Was it real or just a fleeting infatuation? Could two people from such disparate worlds build a life together without sacrificing identity or dignity? These questions echoed loudly in the halls of corporate boardrooms and whispered conversations in quiet neighborhoods alike. Alexander wrestled with his own fears. He was a man accustomed to control and certainty, yet love demanded surrender to the unknown. Could he reconcile his high-powered career with a relationship that defied social conventions? Would the sacrifices required be worth the risk of losing everything he'd worked so hard to achieve? Maria, on the other hand, faced the harsh reality of societal judgment and internal conflict. She loved Alexander deeply, but was painfully aware of the gulf that separated their lives. Would she be accepted in his world? Could she maintain her sense of self without being consumed by the pressures of fitting in? Their story became a living debate about the nature of love itself. Was love a powerful force capable of transcending economic divides, or was it an illusion easily shattered by the harsh realities of class and expectation? Philosophers and psychologists have long argued about the role of socioeconomic factors in romantic relationships. Some contend that shared values and experiences create the strongest bonds, while others believe love can bridge even the widest gaps. For Alexander and Maria, the truth lay somewhere in between. Their love was tested by external forces, skeptical family members, judgmental peers, and the relentless glare of public scrutiny. But it was also tested internally by insecurities and fears that stemmed from their different backgrounds. Yet, in the crucible of these challenges, their connection grew stronger. They learned to communicate beyond words, to understand the silent struggles each faced. Love became an act of rebellion, a statement against the rigid structures that sought to keep them apart. One evening, sitting together after a long day filled with both triumphs and setbacks, Alexander turned to Maria and asked, "Do you believe love can really overcome everything?" She smiled softly, her eyes reflecting both hope and realism. "I believe love is a choice, a daily decision to see beyond barriers and build bridges. It's not easy, but it's possible." Their journey illustrated a profound truth. Love isn't just a feeling. It's a commitment to fight for connection, despite obstacles. It requires courage to face societal norms, resilience to endure hardships, and faith in the possibility of something greater. As they navigated the complexities of their worlds, Alexander and Maria became emblematic of a broader struggle, one that millions face when love crosses the lines society draws. Their story invited others to question assumptions about wealth, class, and romance. It challenged the notion that love must conform to social expectations and demonstrated that authentic connection could flourish in the most unlikely circumstances. In the end, whether love can overcome all barriers may depend less on the obstacles themselves and more on the strength and willingness of the hearts involved. For Alexander and Maria, love was both the battle and the victory, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to transcend boundaries and find unity in difference. Their journey continues to inspire those who dare to believe that love, against all odds, can indeed triumph. Change and new beginnings. The landscape of Alexander and Maria's lives was shifting beneath their feet, a dynamic force fueled by the trials they had endured and the love they had nurtured against all odds. Change was no longer a distant concept or a future possibility. It was happening now, reshaping their world and opening doors to new beginnings. After the tumultuous crisis that nearly toppled Grant Enterprises, Alexander found himself standing at a crossroads, not just professionally, but personally. The bankruptcy threat had forced him to reconsider what truly mattered, the empire he had built or the life he yearned to create with Maria. In the wake of near collapse, something unexpected happened. The pressure that once suffocated began to forge a new clarity. Alexander realized that success was not just about wealth or status, but about authenticity, connection, and purpose. This shift in perspective sparked a transformation in how he led his company and how he embraced his relationship. Maria's influence was profound. Her resilience, hope, and unwavering support helped Alexander rediscover strength beyond financial power. She reminded him that even in the darkest moments, new beginnings are possible when hearts remain open. Together, they embarked on a journey of reinvention, not just as a couple, but as individuals committed to growth. Maria pursued her dreams with renewed vigor, enrolling in night classes and exploring opportunities that once seemed out of reach. Alexander embraced a leadership style grounded in empathy and transparency, seeking to rebuild the company with integrity. Their relationship evolved into a partnership defined by mutual respect and shared aspirations. The social barriers that had once loomed large began to diminish, replaced by a deep understanding that love transcends status and wealth. Change also rippled through their social circles. Some family members and friends, once skeptical, witnessed the genuine bond between Alexander and Maria and began to soften their views. The narrative shifted from doubt to admiration, from opposition to acceptance. Yet, the path forward was not without challenges. Adjusting to new roles, facing lingering prejudices, and navigating the complexities of blending two very different worlds required patience and resilience. Alexander and Maria faced these hurdles with grace, learning that change is a process rather than a destination. They celebrated small victories, the smile of acceptance from a doubtful family member, the progress Maria made in her studies, the steady recovery of the company's fortunes. Their story became a beacon of hope for others caught between worlds, proof that new beginnings are possible when love and determination align. In the quiet moments, away from the spotlight and noise, Alexander and Maria reflected on their journey. They understood that change was not just about external success, but about inner growth and the courage to embrace uncertainty. As they looked toward the future, their hearts were filled with cautious optimism. The trials they had faced had forged a bond stronger than ever, rooted in authenticity and shared dreams. Their love story was no longer defined by obstacles, but by the possibilities that change brings. It was a testament to the power of resilience, the beauty of transformation, and the hope found in every new beginning. And as the city lights twinkled below their shared apartment, Alexander and Maria knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, ready to write the next chapter of their extraordinary journey. Love beyond wealth and status. The city never truly sleeps, but sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, a stillness settles a moment to reflect on journeys taken and the roads yet to come. For Alexander and Maria, their story had unfolded like a tapestry woven with threads of struggle, hope, and profound love. Now, standing at the cusp of what felt like a new era, they faced the realization that love transcended far beyond wealth, status, and societal expectation. Their relationship, once seen as an improbable alliance between a wealthy CEO and a humble cleaning lady, had blossomed into something far deeper. It was a testament not just to passion, but to endurance, understanding, and mutual respect. The chasm of their different worlds had not been erased overnight. Rather, it had been bridged by the shared experiences, sacrifices, and growth that only true love can inspire. For Alexander, the journey had transformed his definition of success. The glittering towers and balance sheets mattered less than the warmth of Maria's hand in his. He had learned that power without compassion was hollow, and wealth without connection was empty. Through love, he discovered a richness that money could never buy. Maria, too, had grown. From the quiet corners of her modest life to the vibrant, sometimes daunting, world Alexander inhabited, she had embraced change without losing the core of who she was. Her dreams had expanded alongside their relationship, fueled by a belief that no one's past should limit their future. Together, they had confronted doubts and judgments, fought through crises, and redefined what it meant to belong not to a social class, but to each other. Their love was a quiet rebellion against the barriers imposed by society, a living proof that connection transcends circumstance. Their story raised timeless questions about the nature of love and human connection. Is it possible to truly see and accept someone beyond the roles and labels society assigns? Can love flourish in the spaces between wealth and poverty, privilege and struggle? For Alexander and Maria, the answer was a resounding yes. Their love was a reminder that beneath the facades of status and wealth lie shared desires to be understood, to be valued, to be loved unconditionally. As they looked toward the future, they understood that their journey was not an end, but a beginning. Life would continue to present challenges, but they faced them armed with the knowledge that love was their greatest strength. In a world often divided by lines drawn in golden grit, their story stood as a beacon of hope. It invited others to believe that love could be the force that bridges divides, heals wounds, and creates new paths. And so, in the soft glow of the city's awakening lights, Alexander and Maria stepped forward together, not as CEO and cleaner, but as partners, equals, and kindred spirits, bound by a love that knew no bounds. Their story, like all great stories, was a journey of transformation, a testament to the enduring power of love, to change lives and transcend the limits we think define us. As they embraced the possibilities ahead, one truth remained clear: love, in its purest form, is the greatest wealth of all. As we gently close the chapter on this incredible journey, remember that success isn't just about the milestones or the millions. It's about the quiet moments of perseverance, the small steps taken when no one is watching, and the courage to keep dreaming even when the path isn't clear. Life has its ups and downs, but every challenge carries a seed of growth, and every setback whispers a chance to rise again. If this story touched your heart or sparked a flicker of hope, please give us a like and subscribe to Stories TH for more inspiring tales just like this. I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below with where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's amazing to see how far our community reaches. Now, as the lights dim and the world grows quiet, take a deep breath. Let the calm wash over you. Know that wherever you are, you're not alone on this journey. And sometimes, the softest whispers hold the greatest strength. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. Until next time, take care and keep your heart open.